Hi, it's Anya here, and we need to talk. We need to talk about communication. Why do we need to talk about communication? Because it's honestly the thing that the world seems to be lacking the most in. Good communication skills. Being able to talk to people without losing your mind, making assumptions, jumping down people's throats, causing relationship issues because we couldn't sit down and listen and understand and all that fun stuff. We suck at communication. And it's destroying our relationships, our intimate and personal relationships. It's also destroying our sex lives, let's be honest about it. But it's also causing issues in our friendships. It's causing issues in our relations with people just on the internet and on social media. And if we can't have better communication, we're going to keep having difficulties in our romantic relationships. And on a bigger scale, we're going to make it even more and more difficult to actually find ways to improve society and the world overall because no one's listening to one another. So this video is just going to have a few different tips and tricks on how to improve communication in your relationships. I think these are just great tips for whoever you're communicating with. As I just started thinking about communication overall, I thought about conversations I have with my mom and how we can misunderstand what the other person is saying or meaning. We interpret things too much, and that just leads to more problems in communication. It leads to resentments, it leads to hurt feelings. It ain't no way to do it. So here are 4 tips to help improve communication in your relationships. 1. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable because, my friends, that is vulnerability at work right there. And that is something that is lacking in the world right now. We're all pretty uncomfortable with being vulnerable. We're all pretty uncomfortable with opening ourselves up and feeling that level of fear of what it means when we show someone our true selves or when we show someone our most personal aspects of ourselves because we're afraid of being rejected, we're afraid of being laughed at, we're afraid of being mocked, we're afraid of all these things. Being vulnerable is a very uncomfortable feeling, but we have to get used to sitting in that level of discomfort because that is where the best and most important conversations happen. Vulnerability is important for all of our relationships in our lives. It's important for our relationships with our friends to stay connected and to really feel deeper levels of trust with them, but it's also important with our families as well because it is through this level of vulnerability that we become closer with each other. But it's incredibly important in our romantic relationships as well because those are the spaces and people that you are probably the most intimate with. The biggest case of that being sex. There is nothing that opens us up more to that feeling of sharing our most intimate selves than getting naked and allowing someone else to get up close and personal with our sexy bits. That sense of connectedness, that openness, that vulnerability, that not only makes our relationships with other people better, but it makes us feel so much better to not feel like we need to hide anymore. Vulnerability is such a important and vital and beautiful part of life, but we're all very terrified of it, understandably. We've also made it so that so many of things that should be vulnerable aren't vulnerable and intimate anymore, such as sex. And this is fine in some situations, right? But we've made vulnerability and intimacy kind of something that's unsexy, that we don't even really want to engage with. This can be fine in some instances, and some people might not experience that level of vulnerability and intimacy every time they engage in sex. Again, totally fine. But removing some of these aspects of vulnerability and intimacy from our relationships can often lead to us feeling very disconnected, and that's not a good way to feel in any relationship that you're having. The way we can work on fixing this is by getting back in touch with what communication really needs to be, what real, deep, and connecting communication is. And that starts by realizing that it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to put us out of our comfort zones. And that's a good thing, because that is where the most important conversations happen. Because it is in those moments where we are often revealing our more true selves and our deepest thoughts and feelings, and not worrying about the plethora of masks that we are all wearing on a daily basis. So get used to what it feels like to communicate without the mask of what everyone else wants of you on. 2, listen to understand and not to respond. Most of us are engaging in conversations where we're just waiting for our turn to speak, rather than really hearing what the other person is saying, and we have to stop doing this. And yes, this is happening in relationships, from friendships to families to intimate relationships, but it's also happening on social media, let's be honest. We are very quick to just jump to a conclusion and immediately say we know what someone's thinking and run it into the ground, shove it down their throat, and all of that stuff. It's just continuing to broaden the gap that is between all of us in trying to connect. So if you are looking to improve communication with your partner or with your friends, your family, whoever you're wanting to build better relationships with, stop doing this. Start listening to really understand what the person is saying to you. Don't be sitting there waiting for your own opportunity to say something. When you do that, you don't actually hear what the person is trying to communicate to you. Thus, you can't be involved with determining solutions or working through these issues because you're just waiting to react. So listen to their words, listen to what they're understanding about situations, listen to their feelings, listen to how they're interpreting the issues and what's happening. Think of it like you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, and for whatever reason, the person you're working with has hidden some of the puzzle pieces because they didn't think you'd like the image that would come together when you fit that puzzle piece in. You're not here to get angry about why they hid something or what they did. You're there because you want to see the pieces and you want to figure out how they fit into the overall puzzle. Relationships don't thrive when we're constantly reactionary and when we are just constantly assuming we understand something rather than engaging with listening. So be open to just listening and really understand what your partner is trying to communicate. On that note, be open and not reactive. As you're being an active listener and working to understand what's going on, also remember that there is a reason why they're having this conversation with you. A lot of times it's because something has been bothering them for a while, and a lot of times they really want to fix it. But equally remember, it's probably terrifying for them to open up to you about this as well. In this, it's likely that it's going to cause some emotions to arise in you. You might get hurt, you might get scared, you might get offended, and this could lead to you feeling like you have to defend yourself. But it's important to recognize that A, we are not our emotions. It's good to acknowledge them and address them, but we don't have to be aggressive or defensive in our reactions because of B. What we understand isn't necessarily what our partners are actually saying. Which brings us back to the importance of number 2, really listening and not just looking to respond. Because a lot of times when we hear what someone is saying, we have a tendency to interpret what they mean. We have a tendency to jump to conclusions and assume things about our partner's meaning and what they really are having an issue with. And that leads to a problem because then once again, your partner is not feeling seen or heard. And that's what we're trying to build here, ensuring that both individuals are seen and heard in regards to communication. This is equally important because a lot of times people will feel like they're being blamed for something, or they're being told they're wrong, or they're the issue, when a lot of times the partner isn't saying that. This is why jumping to conclusions based on your assumptions and what you're reading into the situation is never a good thing. When you have those thoughts and concerns coming up, don't react to them. Instead, we're going to rewrite them in a more productive way. And that's where number 4 comes in. Ask questions. When you feel yourself starting to get defensive or starting to react to whatever it is your partner's saying, that maybe it's feeling a little bit too close to home or a little bit too emotional for you, take a breath, find your calm again. Find a place of calmness in your head and just think about what it is that caused the emotional reaction. What you'll find, what you should find, is a question in it. Some of the best ways to phrase these questions are in a balance of trying to clear up the actual meaning behind these words. So perhaps asking your partner, and repeating back to them what they said. You said X, Y, and Z made you feel like this, which makes me feel like you don't like A, B, and C about me. Is that what you mean, or am I misinterpreting? This gives both you and your partner an opportunity for more clarity. It gives them the opportunity to think more clearly about what it is they're having a difficulty with and what they actually want the solution to be. And it gives you the opportunity to address some of the things that you might have had a conflict with. It also lets your partner know that you are listening, you are paying attention, and you do care and you want to solve the issues, but you recognize that in order to solve the issues, you need to have clearer answers on what it is your partner is actually struggling with. The important thing to remember about these questions and not being reactive to things is that a lot of times in these situations, it might feel like our partners are trying to attack us, but more often than not, they aren't. Overall, what I really think we all need to start doing better with regards to communication is not looking at our communication and our conversations with others as one person versus the other person. It's not you versus me. It should be you and me versus whatever the issue is. That's what it really comes down to. And if we can start working towards bettering communication skills in this way, I think it can only help our relationships overall. Hope that's helped. I will talk to y'all later. Anya out. Bye.